Hello, everyone. So by night, I'm a Black Hat Review board member. I'm a contributor to the security community. By day, I work at Coalfire, which has a lot of federal government work, and that's why this panel is so important and near and dear to my heart. Today, we have Chris Butera, Acting Executive Director of the Cybersecurity Division at CISA. We also have Bob Costello, CISA's Chief Information Officer. They will sit down with Frank Cilluffo, Director of the McCrary Institute of Cyber and Critical Information Security at Auburn University. I seem to have gotten the talk with the longest titles, but these are three very, very intelligent cybersecurity leaders, and they're going to talk about something that I think a lot of us are concerned about, which is the evolving role of CISA and its duty to keep our nation secure. Please welcome our panelists.
Well, thank you, Chair. Well, thank you, Charles, and thanks to everyone for joining us this afternoon. My name's Frank Cilluffo. I display varying degrees of ignorance in lots of subjects, but I'll try to keep the conversation going here. Really excited for our discussion today with two battle-tested veterans of the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, better known as CISA. And really excited to get into the conversation. So without further ado, why don't we just jump right in? So lots of discussion of late on CISA, its role, its future, and I'd be curious just to do a little bit of level setting in terms of where we are, where you think things are going, and Bob, maybe I'll start with you.
No, thanks, Frank, and it's a pleasure to be here today. So I think it's a great question. I would say, first and foremost, we are doing amazing work every day. And it's been a pleasure over the last 6 months working directly with Chris on several initiatives. Like in my office right now, we're releasing a lot of new capabilities almost every week to enable the cyber operators to operate better, more efficiently.
Including a couple good ones just yesterday, right?
We did, yeah, absolutely. And then just today, Rich, we released an emergency directive to the Federal Civilian Executive Branch on Exchange, but also we dropped 10 industrial control system alerts today as well. So we are very, very hard at work. And I think, as we were discussing earlier, we talked about Hemingway's quote around maybe the exaggeration of death. And while I share his love of Key West, I think General Oliver Smith had a great line. We're not retreating, we're advancing in a new direction. And we are driving hard every day, and I work with some of the most technical experts in the world, and I couldn't be prouder of the work that we're doing every day. And I just see great things ahead.
Well, Hemingway, you're going to have to. I'm going to have to get up to my game on quotes.
All right.
I've always got a Mark Twain in me, but we'll wait for that in a little bit. But Chris, sort of looking at it from CSD's perspective.
Yeah, so I think we are really focused on our operational mission every single day. Bob mentioned the emergency directive we released this morning based on a disclosure that happened here at the conference yesterday. So really trying to move fast and keep up with the pace of the adversary. We continue to see the adversary exploit vulnerabilities faster than we've ever seen happen. So we're really focused on how can we move faster using innovation, automation, but really being also trying to encourage everyone else to keep up along the way. So I think a lot of you are familiar with our known exploited vulnerabilities catalog. It's been a great partnership we've had with people, with our different industry and security researchers who let us know when a vulnerability has been exploited. We add it to this catalog, and it really helps a lot of people with prioritization of remediation and patching. And so with that, we also have a deadline for patching for our federal agencies. And so with the Citrix Bleed vulnerability a month ago, that was the first time we've asked them to patch within 24 hours. We did that again with the Microsoft SharePoint vulnerability a couple weeks ago. And so really trying to move faster in this space as well.
Awesome. So unwavering commitment, steadfast to the mission. Against that backdrop, though, there has been some news and including some significant budget cuts, a lot of discussion about some personnel moving on, and I'd be curious from your perspectives how you're addressing some of these challenges as well as making sure that the core mission goes unfettered.
Yeah, I mean, we did lose some people that took voluntary separation from the government, but we also have a very talented workforce still at CISA, and we're really proud of the work that they do every single day. I mean, I think a good example of that was the Microsoft SharePoint vulnerability that we responded to over the weekend, a few weekends ago. And again, it's a really good example of how we work with the security researchers and industry as well. So we had people who were called up on Saturday morning when we got these reports coming in that there was a SharePoint vulnerability being exploited. We actually worked directly to get in touch with Microsoft, worked very closely with Microsoft through several different updates on how we actually provide the best guidance to make sure people can remediate quickly. And then we work really closely with our regional staff to actually notify owners and operators that we are aware of that have this vulnerability exposed to the internet, and try to actually get after mitigating this as quickly as possible. And then actually, once we were aware that there was actually, again, exploitation of this vulnerability, we added it to the KEV so that everyone actually could help prioritize the patching of this vulnerability.
Awesome. Bob?
I was just thinking, like, me and Chris in the last 6 months have gotten to work together probably more than we had in the last 4 years. And I just hit 4 years, and here it says, and one of the things I was thinking about when Chris was talking, how fast we're moving. We had our first KEV entry in under 24 hours almost, I think. And we've worked several really big issues. On my front, one of the things that I've been most excited about, Chris and I have worked together on, people left voluntarily, but we're also seeing some amazing people step into new roles, take over new leadership positions, and I think that is absolutely amazing. And I think when we look out to the CISA alumni force that's out there now, we see people that came from CISA doing amazing things, continuing to work with us and continuing to root for us. One of the other things that I'm really concentrating on, most of my experience at DHS, I'll be there 18 years in January, was in the law enforcement side. I worked for CBP and ICE for a long time, and it was, operator safety. How do we protect, illicit people or materials from entering the country? I see that same commitment here at CISA for the work that we do. I get excited every day. I feel that same passion that I've felt for 18 years. And we're really enabled right now and supported in our efforts to deploy new technologies. We'll have several releases in the next several months from my office that'll make it easier for critical infrastructure to sign up for our cyber hygiene services. We deployed or released via open source this week, or was it last week, a tool called Thorium for malware and forensic analysis. And these are just amazing things that we're doing every day.
Awesome. And you sort of, both of you brought up speed and a little bit of scale and how CISA is addressing that, but can't have a discussion without the why, and in this case, the adversary that has a vote in all of this. Obviously, don't want to put words in your mouth, but nation states, China, Russia, Iran, North Korea, increased role of hacktivists and criminal enterprises and anyone with an axe to grind one way or another. I'd be curious what your thoughts are given not just what you're seeing right now, but the changing tactics, techniques, and procedures of our adversaries. Anything you found most surprising and anything you really need to foot stomp in terms of our critical infrastructure owner-operators to be on the lookout for, to use the BOLO concept with law enforcement.
There we go.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things, in the flurry of releases that we had in the last 2 weeks, we had a joint publication with some of our interagency partners on Scattered Spider, for example, and I think you saw there a good example of an adversary utilizing AI and utilizing social engineering to make that initial access vector before actually using cybersecurity techniques to elevate privileges and move around. So I think while that is not a new group that we've dealt with, we continue to highlight some of the evolving tactics and techs we've seen, including adversaries using AI, especially on the social engineering front.
Bob, anything? And how you're looking at it as a CIO as well.
Sure, and for the people not familiar with the federal government, often CISOs report to the CIOs in federal government, which can be a little bit different. than elsewhere. So I have to worry about a lot. And I think it is very interesting running IT at an IT agency and cyber agency. So I get a lot of resources. And I think what I've seen over the last several years, we used to really concentrate on, well, maybe we'll patch that in 30 days or high vulnerability, and it doesn't work that way anymore. And we're having to change the thinking of the people that run our defensive cyber operations. And one of the ways that we go about doing that, first, it's a cultural change. It's exhibiting the behaviors that we want to see in our teams. We assume breach every day. We don't assume blame when a breach happens. It's how do we respond to it? How do we recover from it? And I try and ensure that my team understands that. I think the other thing that Chris is much more an expert on this than I am. We're seeing a lot of chaining of vulnerabilities. A low, and then all of a sudden they're in, and then living off the land techniques that are a lot harder to detect than we used to, or than prior years. Yeah,
absolutely. And I want to build on that a little bit. Do you heed your own advice? So you expect a lot of our owner-operators, both at state, local, tribal, territorial, as well as obviously critical infrastructure owner-operators. Any thoughts on that?
We do. And it's hard. And I don't mean it's hard because I think CISA gives amazing advice and it's easy to follow. The game we play and the space we play in, cyber is a team sport, but it's also a hard sport. Yeah. So I do try and design our systems to model the architectures that we are advising. And much like anyone, I have technical debt that I'm working through. Mm-hmm. By the end of this, I'm a federal employee. I live off the fiscal year, not the calendar year. So by September 30th, we'll be completely done with our on-premise environments and migrated to the cloud. And we do try and work really closely between Chris and I on innovation and deploying new technologies to secure and defend CISA's own systems.
Chris, and I want to build on that in a different kind of way. So I think we all recognize the importance of information sharing, but we're in a new era where it's really about operational collaboration. And you only get to know someone if you're in the foxhole fighting the same fight at the same time. And that includes some of our stakeholders outside of the federal government. So absolutely. Tell me about operational collaboration and where you think things are going.
Yeah, and I just want to thank Bob too for, we try to put out a lot of security guidance and best practices. And sometimes I think we get very excited about trying to make things as locked down as possible. Mm-hmm. And so one of the great things that Bob does is he helps us test that to make sure that it is actually guidance that is implementable. So I think that's one of the
sort of beta testing.
Beta testing, right?
There you go, good.
So we want to make sure that the guidance that we are putting out is useful to owners and operators so they can implement that. On the operational collaboration front, I think I gave a few examples already, how we are really reliant on industry to help us in this mission, and it is a team sport. No entity really has that single view of the threat landscape by themselves, and CISA, is kind of in a unique position as an agency to be in the center of some of that information sharing. We're not part of the intelligence community or a law enforcement agency, but we do work very closely with those communities. We work very closely with the ISACs and very closely with a lot of different industry partners who help us give each of us a piece of that puzzle that we try to put together, synthesize, and release our insights back out to everyone to kind of help the community.
Bob, anything to add on that?
No, I think it's a pleasure supporting the operators in that way, and I think what I'm really passionate about is making it easier to engage with CISA through our systems. And I think that that is something that both Chris and I are concentrating on. We want to be seen first, easy to get in contact with us, easy to work with us. The security of our systems is something that we can all understand, and the data sharing that goes into that. And I think that really, my role is to make sure that Chris doesn't have to think about that. And the operators can operate each and every day, and so that they can drive that effectiveness into their mission.
Awesome. And commitment to industry is as steadfast as ever, right?
Yes.
because I mean, you really can't. You talk about one team, one fight within the alphabet soup of DC, but it's really about everyone else in our country, society, and elsewhere. It's the Main Street role there, and I do think that there's some amazing initiatives that I hope will be doubled down on. And quite honestly, the only way you learn is by playing the game. Yep. So, and to walk a mile in someone else's shoes, just not in Vegas. It's pretty hard. I did that accidentally last night. But, you know, I want to get back to an information sharing effort, and that is a statute that shares the same name. I think sometimes gets confused with CISA, but it's the Cybersecurity Information Sharing Act of 2015 that removed some regulatory obstacles to be able to share information between industry, government, and the like. Seems to be the one bill that everyone agrees with, but there are very few calendar days to get it done. I mean, Sean Planke reaffirmed his commitment to that, Sean Cairncross, Secretary Noem, pretty much everyone. What are y'all doing to make sure that that happens? And I'd be curious if that does go away, what those implications could be.
Yeah, so I started at CISA in 2014 and have been kind of right in the mix of the information sharing mission through a lot of my time at CISA in different roles. And really was lucky to be there as part of the launch when CISA 2015 was authorized 10 years ago. And really seeing that more and more companies feel comfortable sharing information with the government with those protections. It's been a really useful authority for us, and we're really hopeful that Congress will reauthorize that for us.
Bob, anything to add to this?
I totally agree with Chris. Like, we are very hopeful for reauthorization, and I think now more than ever, we're seeing the adversaries move so quickly. We have to share information, and often that information becomes dated very quickly because the adversaries are pivoting so quickly. So we're thrilled for all the support that's being shown for reauthorization.
You know, my own view on this, not because I don't want to put you in a policy box, but it's essential. And trust, I'm going to pull my Mark Twain. I'm going to paraphrase him. Trust is the coin of the realm. And the reality is to build trust takes eons. To lose it can happen really fast. So I do hope that Congress takes this initiative on, because not to hyperventilate here, but it'll have pretty significant implications for, it'll be a step backward. So hopefully we can get our arms around that. I want to jump to another issue that there's been some good news on recently, and that was some of the state, local, SLCGP, state, local grant program. You've seen a shift to more responsibility in the hands of our state, local, tribal, territorial, who are on the front lines of cyber, so kind of makes sense, as well as industry. But sort of around that SLCGP, and there was a NOFO that came out last week. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but anything you want to add to that?
I mean, thanks for highlighting that. It's a really important tool for our state and local governments and our tribal and territorial governments as well. We released over $100 million in funds for grant applications, and we are really excited that those state and local governments can help use those funds to better secure their networks. We also do a lot of different work that try to provide different resources and tools to our state and local governments. We have over 100 cybersecurity advisors in the field that we try to reach out and work directly with those state and local governments to help them both plan for these grants and help them implement some of the things that they actually are asking for some of those funds for. We have
It's a big number.
It's a big number.
Yeah.
Over 100 advisors as well, $100 million. They're both big numbers.
Mm-hmm.
So very excited to have that support and to be able to support that community.
Bob, anything to add on that front? Because one of the challenges is, just like federal government and industry, state, local, sometimes you get the offices of information technology, you've got law enforcement, they don't always come together, but at the end of the day, they're the first to leave and the first to respond and the last to leave. So.
Absolutely, and across DHS we see that partnership. On the law enforcement side over here at CISA, I think the grants are an amazing avenue to help shore up some of our state, local, and territorial and tribal areas. I think what I'm excited about in my area, Chris was talking about all our cybersecurity advisors out in the field, our state cyber advisors. It's really amazing the work they do, and we are very much on the cusp in the next couple of months about releasing some IT services to make it easier to sign up for our cyber hygiene services. We already have 11,000 customers that rely on CISA to scan their external attack surface. For a while, we were doing email signups and passing things around, and that's not a lot of fun. So in the past couple of months, we've automated some of that, and we'll soon be able to have people go into a portal, sign up, track their progress, see where they're at. And I think that's just an amplifying power from CISA. So you can actually work with us through that to see how you're doing, track your progress, engage with our cybersecurity advisors in a method not over email. And I think that just makes us so much more effective and able to respond rapidly and engage with our partners.
Yeah, and I want to take that question in terms of some of the streamlining and the innovation and use of technology in a different way as well. I mean, you've released a number of alerts and products of late, some of which we touched on already on this panel, but any more light you want to shed on some of those?
Yeah, I think another one to note, again, there's been so many over the last few months, it's hard to choose one, and my team might get mad at me
That's
for
where it
choosing
matters.
the wrong
That's
one,
why
right?
it's actually important. It's not concepts, it's capabilities.
Yeah, so I think one of them that we really think will be useful is the eviction strategies tool that we released last week. What this tool does is allows you to map either an actual intrusion or a potential, maybe some TTPs that a specific threat actor is using to compromise other entities, and it's mapped to the MITRE ATT&CK framework. And what it does is it builds an actual eviction and recovery plan for you. I think that this is a very valuable tool, helps us kind of scale some of this mission so that people, when they are having an incident, they can rely on this tool. It's open source. You can use it from our website. You can download it and run it in your own environment if you like. The other use case for it, I think that we really should focus on is I don't think we pay enough attention to how important the containment and recovery is. We spend a lot of time on prevention, but not as much time on how do we actually minimize the blast radius and that containment strategy, and then how do we actually have an efficient and effective recovery piece? How do we actually run our operational missions, whether we're critical infrastructure owners and operators, without access to some of our key IT systems or even the internet? So I think it's a really good planning tool as well. So I would encourage folks to utilize that tool for tabletop exercises or actually hands-on recovery testing exercises as well. I think it's a really valuable tool that I'd love to highlight today.
And I'm going to throw another quote in there now that Bob upped me a couple. General Eisenhower used to say, in preparation for battle, I found plans to be useless, but planning to be indispensable. And I'm not suggesting plans are useless. They actually are very important. But the planning, that's where the rubber hits the road.
Yeah, I think you can really learn a lot by having that muscle memory and even the engagement and who you talk to and that kind of, you can have the plan on the shelf, but unless you actually exercise it regularly, it collects dust pretty fast and is out of date.
And you can't be exchanging business cards when the bomb goes off or something bad happens, right? I mean, at the end of the day, that is part of the connection that's so essential. Bob, anything you want to add in terms of some of the latest and greatest?
So I think, a little piggyback on what Chris is saying there. We spent many years, like we've been doing this a while. It was always about prevention, protecting the edge, and it just doesn't work that way anymore. So you really need to work on your resilience and recovery and containment when something happens. Some of these adversaries are difficult, sometimes impossible to get out without some pretty drastic actions. I think on our innovation front, like what really excites me, we're doing some really incredibly innovative work. When I kind of pace when I try and think. So I walked the floor earlier today, and I saw so many companies were either engaging with or working with or deploying their technologies. We won't name any now, but it was quite cool to kind of see that. And I think the other thing that I'm excited about when we talk about the technical expertise at CISA, some of our people in the office of the technical director are the smartest people I've ever worked with in my life. And the work we're doing in that community, whether it's through some of our work with the national labs or InQtel or others, is really trailblazing in setting us up for not just a lot of success, but to kind of understand where we need to be looking at next.
Awesome, awesome, and sort of Wayne Gretzky, skate to where the puck's going to be, not where it is. So that's actually good to hear.
We're throwing a lot of quotes out.
Yeah, I know. Now you outdid me, so can't let you end that way. So, one initiative we didn't discuss a whole lot about, but I think is near and dear, is the whole CVE effort at CISA. Anything you want to start us off there, Chris, and Bob, jump on in?
Yeah, so I was lucky enough to be on a panel at B-Sides Las Vegas talking about the future of the CVE program on Tuesday. Would love to just highlight a couple things today. We are heavily invested in the CVE program. We are going to continue to fund the CVE program and continue to improve the CVE program. It is really central to all of our cybersecurity operations. I talked about the SharePoint story earlier, where we were working on the weekend with Microsoft, with security researchers, and notifying people, right? We have to have that exact unique way to identify the specific vulnerability that we're talking about. And in the SharePoint case, there was 4 different CVEs involved, right? And so we had to have that specific unique identifier attached to the vulnerability. So we were all talking about the same thing. And without the CVE program, we don't have that. The other piece is like automation, right? We have to have automation built into the ecosystem to remediate faster. And we've continued to build that. And I want to talk about the CVE program kind of more broadly and some of the history of it. We've really kind of bucketed it as 2 different phases. And so from 2016 to 2024, so that like the last 8 years, we went from having 24 CNAs. These are the CVE numbering authorities that assign the CVE numbers and create the CVE records. And then we also went from 6,400 records in 2016. In 2024, we now have 460 plus CNAs. So we've federated that program worldwide. So we have many more actual people that are putting that data into the system. And we've actually grown that record count to 40,000 plus records in a single year. And we expect that to go up, continue to rise every single year. So that program is really foundational, both to our tactical operational work, but also to some of our strategic work as well. That aligns really well with the common weaknesses enumeration that we also sponsor and run. And the CVE records have that mapping in there, so we can understand what are the most common flaws that we are seeing in vulnerabilities of software, and with our Secure by Design effort and other ways to try to actually remove entire classes of those vulnerabilities through technical means or otherwise. So that program is super foundational to our agency.
Absolutely.
And it's really the basis and foundation for the whole vulnerability and cybersecurity ecosystem.
Bob, anything you want to add on that?
On the operational side of someone who often has to respond to incidents, I can't double tap enough what Chris is saying. We need to be talking about the same thing, and CVE does that for us. And I think it's an extremely powerful tool, and it works extremely well. For those, sometimes down in the trenches, it's very difficult if we are not all calling something the same thing.
Yeah, and I think I talked about kind of the growth era. My 13-year-old daughter might not want me to, or maybe she would like me saying the era, so this was our growth era. We're now kind of moving into the quality era, right? So we're really focused on working with the CNAs to make sure they're improving the data quality in all of those records so that we can have that common weakness entered in that record. We can have the patch linked to that record. So more of that completeness and data quality issues so that we can actually, again, build that automation through the whole ecosystem.
And sort of the whole KEV list, if you can maybe explain to some of our audience who may not be as well versed on that, how that fits in.
Yeah, so the KEV is really a prioritization mechanism for your CVE lists. We use something called the Stakeholder Specific Vulnerability Categorization. It's CVSS backwards. So we actually enrich all the CVE records with 3 of those fields. One of those fields is exploitability. And so if it's known exploited, that goes into the CVE record as well. And then we add it to our known exploited vulnerabilities catalog, which we post on the CISA website in machine readable format. We have tons of our great industry partners who are in the expo today that have ingested that KEV list, and they actually categorize the vulnerabilities in whatever your security products are based on that known exploited vulnerabilities tag. And it really helps organizations prioritize the vulnerabilities that they need to patch the fastest, because we know they're being exploited at the moment.
And we cannot escape a discussion at Black Hat or anywhere else without AI, and there've been an action plan was recently released around AI, and I know CISA has some significant responsibilities and all that. But I'd be curious, maybe Bob, firstly, how is CISA utilizing AI to benefit your mission?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think in some ways, one of my mottos is like, I could build a lot of stuff. Sometimes that's not the best way any longer, and probably wasn't for a while. So we're working with a lot of our vendors that do have Gen AI technology within their stack to enable our workforce to be more effective in what they're doing. Some of that is that business automation front, Copilot, which has actually turned out to be pretty helpful to our workforce in a number of other areas. We're working with a lot of the security providers that I use within our environment to either turn on AI functions or explore them to make sure that we understand how they work, educate our workforce on them. There's, me and Chris grew up in the age where you had to learn like 18 different languages to query, 25 different tools. That's not the way we want to train our workforce anymore. So, some of the AI work to help us query better is what we're exploring. We're actually doing some great work. Earlier this year, I took over some of a large majority of the cyber mission systems. So one of my big goals there is to make sure that we're listening to the threat hunters, vulnerability management teams, the JCDC, and our capacity building teams on, what are your requirements and what do you need to actually do to do your job in the best way possible. And I think AI is going to really enable us to do a lot more things faster and more effectively. So we are exploring, in some cases, what that means with some of our data. And a lot of that's in partnership with Chris's team almost daily, I think.
Yeah, I just want to touch on two things. So in the cyber perspective, we are very interested in utilizing AI for cybersecurity, right? I think this is the way that we start to shift some of the asymmetric advantage that the attacker has. The amount of data that we have to review as defenders to try to find the adversary is enormous, right? And so AI can really help us in that mission space. And on the secondary front, we also are very involved in securing AI systems. And we are doing that very much in partnership with industry. Our JCDC group has an AI security group that actually meets regularly and has different initiatives. They released a playbook for how to respond to AI incidents last year in coordination with these industry groups. And we continue to work together with industry to try to make sure that we're releasing secure systems.
I'm glad you brought up AI for security and securing AI, because they're both essential. And honestly, you blink and you've missed the latest and the greatest.
Absolutely.
You can sort of say the same as the adversary, but you gotta play, right? You're not going to learn until you actually get in the field. And I would be curious how CISA can nurture innovation in this space, whether technologically or the gray matter between two ears, because both are essential. So I'd be curious what your thoughts are there.
I think on my role, one thing I really try and do, and hopefully industry would agree, is deep engagement with industry. I spend a lot of time meeting with industry, having my teams meet with them, explore what's happening. First and foremost, it is imperative on us when we purchase a tool or a solution to make sure we're fully utilizing it. And the best way to do that is to have a good rapport with the equipment manufacturers or software manufacturers. So I try and really drive that up and down my team. I think the other thing that we have to be, I don't know if this is an official quote, but fear is not a reason to not do something. And I try and set that example, with some of my fellow CIOs and with my teams. Listen, my career has been filled with spectacular failures and some spectacular wins. But more than that, don't be afraid to fail, test things out, work with our partners to kind of be forward leaning. And I think we really need to commit to that on our side. So before the end of the year, we're going to be releasing a new industry engagement portal that'll make it easier to schedule meetings with us, provide background but before the meeting, and I'm really excited for that. But I think Chris and I both aren't afraid to try new things, and then hopefully it works, but if it doesn't, that's okay. Take what we learned from it and move on.
Just do it fast, right? And try not to
Absolutely,
repeat
fail
it.
fast.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, if you're to pull a page from industry and the venture capital community and others, it's lots of spectacular failures, and that's the only reason you get those home runs.
Yep.
So, anything, Chris, that you would like to add to that?
I mean, not a lot other than, I think industry is really going to help us in this space, and where we see gaps that industry is not filling, we can work with our government partners. DARPA is doing a ton of work, and we're really closely helping them with some of the AI research that they're doing. And so there is a place for government to fill some of this innovation gaps that maybe we see with industry, but I think industry is really leading the way in most of the AI work that we see today, and this continuous innovation cycle that's going so rapidly that we haven't seen maybe with other technologies.
And to go a little bit back to the adversary, who keeps you up most at night? Pretty much everyone. You don't have a choice, but.
I mean, I think right now we are always focused on any adversary, right? So I think that is, the four that you talked about, the ransomware actors. We do think that, China, with their focus on pre-positioning in some of our critical and structured networks, is very concerning. We continue to have a lot of focus there. I should say that operational technology and industrial control systems has been a lasting priority for our agency, will continue to be a lasting priority for our agency. One of the ways that we get after that is we continue to try to remove control systems that are directly connected to the internet. We still see that quite often. It's very concerning. We are thankful for Congress to give us an administrative subpoena authority that we can actually now use to figure out who owns some of those control systems that are connected to the internet. And with help from the ISPs, gain access to who that entity is, and then contact the entity and have them try to remove that from the internet. Today, we've contacted over 3,000 entities, and we've had over an 80% success rate in getting some of those devices removed from the internet. So that we think that is really important and one way to reduce some of that attack surface.
Bob, I'm going to flip the question, not what keeps you up, but what gets you up every day? What's most exciting?
I love that, and I think what it is. I didn't graduate high school and do what I did. I kind of was a mess up, and then I joined the Air Force. And I found a passion for defending this country, and I believe in what we do. We are there every day, sometimes late nights. Sometimes me and Chris are talking pretty late, or our other team members. We have the best team possible at CISA, and we want to just, to Chris's point, work with critical infrastructure, work with industry, work with our government partners. That's what gets me up every day. Mm-hmm. It's for the last 18 years, even my worst days going home, and I've had some rough days. I've worked some pretty interesting things across DHS.
Wouldn't be meaningful if you didn't. So.
Exactly, but I can go home every day and say I did something to either help someone or protect the country. Or protect our partners, and that's what gets me up every morning.
So Black Hat brings a great audience. Any recruiting going on here? Are you guys spotting talent spotting, or?
I mean, we always want to engage with people. We are very interested in working with anyone who is interested in engaging with our agency. I think that's our number one ask for why we're here, is to try to engage with the community here. Whether you're a security researcher, whether you're an industry partner, whether you have something to add to this mission. I think Bob summed it up, and he got the better question about how do you wake up in the morning.
Sorry, Chris.
I think it keeps me up at night too. It's almost the same thing. Cybersecurity is a national security issue. And I think Bob and I are really honored to lead such an important and amazing team to try to secure our nation. But you are all part of that as well. So I think our ask is continue to engage with us, whether it's here. I'm here for DEF CON as well, so come find me, engage with us, get to know your local cybersecurity advisor. If you need help connecting, we're happy to help you connect. We didn't get a chance to talk about supply chain, which is kind of surprising, right? Encourage your supply chain to engage with us. Have them sign up for our vulnerability scanning program that we talked about. We also have our cyber performance goals, which is the minimum baseline of security requirements that we think all organizations should have implemented. Talk to them, make sure they're doing good work there, and if they need help, please engage with us.
Can I add one, because cybersecurity is national security, but it's also economic security, which is inextricably interwoven today, and CISA's mission matters, right?
Absolutely.
That's why you guys get up every day and do good work. I'm going to, tyranny of time requires I be a bit of a tyrant, but what questions didn't I ask that I should?
I think we got a lot in today.
Yeah, I think
Really a useful panel, and thank you for moderating, and thank you to the Black Hat community for having us here today.
Well, thank you both for the fight you fight every day, and thanks to everyone for joining. And this is a wrap. I was told we're closing out this room for the end of the day. So thank you. Please join me in thank you.